You and I are going to make something beautiful today. Well, I am still very inspired by the Art Deco era and wanted to bring you another great pair of earrings to reflect the style, the simple shapes, the geometry, the colors. And I think these pair of earrings really do that well. Also, I've been watching a lot of Downton Abbey. So I've already run through that whole series and watched the movies in the theater and all that stuff. But I'm running back through that TV series again and enjoying it. I've been closely watching the jewelry, necklaces, earrings, all that good stuff from the characters on the show, and just really loving the style, the lines and the shapes that were coming out in fashion during that time. So let's have some more fun together today with some Art Deco. Let me show you what you're going to need. Believe it or not, these are super simple. You can do this today. Let's quickly run through the items, the tools and supplies that you'll need for today. My faithful bail pliers, chain nose pliers, got some new cutters. We're also going to use a large wrap and tap plier. You could probably get away with a ring mandrel if that's what you have. Always keep your nylon pliers handy. Also a bench block with both nylon and chasing hammer. And then for the selection of wires, I've got a bunch going on here. 16 gauge is going to make, let me bring it up here, is going to make this center round circle. And then I scaled down to the 18 gauge for these arches that are above and below. And then depending on what bead you choose, I'm using 22 gauge to wrap this little, I think it's mother of pearl or it's just shell. And then, the same, whatever wire that will work for your dangling wire wrapped bead at the bottom, your 20 or your 18 gauge for your ear wire at the top. So that's basically the gist. Obviously, we're going to have a ruler. You're going to have like a little polishing cloth to clean your wire before you get started. And that's just about it. Let's get going and make something beautiful today. First, I'm pulling out my 16 gauge. So I'm taking my large wrap and tap pliers, and I'm going to use this middle bail, which is about 15 millimeters on these pliers. And before I do anything, I want to just wipe it down, especially with copper. You're going to have some tarnish on there, and this will clean it up quite nicely. You'll see me do this with all the wire before I pull it out, so that's what I'm doing. Taking this middle bail, and we're just going to do a circle. Now, if you're sitting down to make two of these at one time, go ahead and make yourself two circles while you're at it. No point in repeating yourself. I just have to make this match. So I'm only going to be wrapping it once. And you saw that I brought the wire past where the beginning of the wire is. That's because I really want all of this wire to be rounded all the way. Because sometimes if you don't wrap it fully, this little end won't be rounded and it'll kick out a little bit, kick up. And you don't want that, of course. I'm taking my new, flush cutters. I got really irritated when I was making the hairpins in a few videos ago. I knew I shouldn't have done that, and I did it anyway, and I broke them. So I've got a replacement. So if you saw what I was doing, I'm pushing it past and bringing it past where they would actually meet. So when I bring them back together with each other, they're going to be pushing in on themselves and holding that joint closed. So now I've got this little center ring. Something I'm going to be doing in the future, I've got tools and supplies on the way right now. So as it warms up and I can go outside, I'm going to learn how to solder these joints, and hopefully I will be able to show you how to do that too. I'm not interested in a whole lot of soldering. I just want to be able to have a closed jump ring. So I at least want to learn that as we are in this wire wrapping journey. It seems like it would be valuable. So I'm going to learn that and then hopefully be able to bring it to you so that you can also have a little soldering into your pieces and make them more secure. But we're going to stick with this for now. For this upper and lower arch, I'm cutting 4 inches of the 18 gauge. Okay, so Smokey the Bear is still around. Smokey the Bear ruler wasn't providing me with millimeters on my ruler, and so I did upgrade. We're going to see how this goes. I just came across this orange ruler, and I thought it went well. I mean, it is one of my brand colors. My husband loves orange, and I love green. So that is the little backstory on why I use orange and green for everything. I needed 4 inches. And I'm just going to take the same piece that I just cut and use that to measure the next piece. Back with these large wrap and tap, I'm going to scale down to the very first bale, the smallest bale, which is around 12 or 13 millimeters on my pliers. And the reason for that is because this one was a little bit larger, and we're going to be scooping in these arches into these opening. So I scaled down a little bit smaller in hopes that it would slide in there easily, and it did. Take your 4-inch piece of 18 gauge on your pliers or your ring mandrel. You'll have to find the area on your ring mandrel that is around, it just has to be smaller than this ring a little bit. And I'm going to bend straight around until I've got my arm sticking out evenly on the other side. Just like that. Not doing anything yet. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the other one. All right, so I've got these 2 very long U shapes. We're going to take out our bench block. First, I'm going to do some nylon hammering. This side of our hammer, just strengthen this as best as I can. And you're not going to hurt it. With your nylon or a rawhide or your rubber mallet, you're not going to hurt this. All right. I can do a little bit with this other ring as well. I'm going to switch to the chasing hammer, and I'm going to flatten out this whole ring. And I'm just giving a little bit of flattening all the way around. And you see that joint opened up just a little bit. You can go and do the same movement where you move it past the joint and then slide it back into place, and you should be back to being good. I want to flatten out just the trough of these shapes here. And that just creates a little light catch. Plus it's strengthening the shape as well. So it's a win-win. You get a little light reflection and you get a little more strength. For the next step, take a Sharpie and place these somewhere. Any old centimeter is going to work. And I'm marking in from the bottom of this trough 1 centimeter. And on the other side as well. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to do both. take one of your U shapes here and your bail pliers, and I'm going for the first bail, which is 2 millimeters on my pliers. You can also do this with round nose pliers if that works better for you, or that's what you have. And I'm placing this bail right over top that black dot that we made. And I'm supporting with my thumb and my index, and I'm just bending the arm over the top of this bail. I'm going to turn to the other side and do the same thing. Right on that black dot, I'm support with my index, and I'm just going to push over with my thumb around the bail. And we should have a little shape like this. I want to make sure both sides are angled in evenly. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. There's no kind of, strict science to it. I'm just eyeballing it. And I'm going to do the same thing with this other piece that we have. Right on that black dot, just pushing the arm over the top of that bail. Turn and do the same thing. And we've got that shape again. Let me just adjust this one so we're matching here just a little bit. And you'll have this shape that's going on here. All right, we've got our shapes ready to go. And I've worked through this earring several times. And when it came time to put the stone in, well, this is like a piece of shell, it was kind of difficult once I had everything hooked together. So what I found that worked better was that I mounted in whatever piece of stone that I chose first before I put in these other pieces. So we're just about to that point, but first you need to make your stone selection. These are, I think they were 10 millimeters. 14 millimeters, must have been 10 millimeters. Oh, 10 millimeters wide, and then 14 millimeters long. I was going to use this wonderful faceted blue quartz, but I've already used this on another pair of these Art Deco earrings, and I just wanted to do something a little different. I'm really falling in love with this gold and the pink colors in this shell. Just really love that. It's got color and light all in one thing. It's nice and thin. Has a nice size hole in it that I can fit 22 gauge in there. These are just really, really nice. They're from Fire Mountain Gems. Whether or not they still sell them, I'm not sure, because like you've heard me mention many a times, I inherited a lot of, well, actually, just about 99% of the beads that I have, I inherited. So that these were 14 millimeters long and 10 millimeters wide shells from Fire Mountain Gems, if you wanted to look for something similar. And I also have the tiniest little seed beads to fill in the gap on either side from the opening of the ring. So I just felt like I didn't want it moving around at all. So these little tiny seed beads filled that gap. So if you run into that, you're wrapping something, you're mounting a stone in, you're like, oh, but there's this like little gap. Fill it with an accent color with seed bead, and it will keep that from moving around. I did discover that all of these beads accommodated 22 gauge, so that's what I'm going to use. Some people prefer 24, 26, that's fine, whatever you would like. I like to really see the wrap as much as I can, and that's why I like to use the thickest gauge that I can. And I'm just cutting a length. This is probably roughly around 4 inches, just enough to work with. Let's see what it is, just out of curiosity. 4.5. I've got about 4.5 inches here. I'm just eyeballing it. It's like cooking. You know what's right when you're doing it. You know, that needs a little more flour. No, that needs a little more butter. You know what looks right. And it's the same way with jewelry. Same way with art in general. And I'm sliding on my beads. You see the little bits of black. That's why I try to wipe down my wire as much as possible before I start working with it, just to avoid that. I'm grabbing this ring that we made at the very, very beginning and placing my wire and my wraps, wire and my stones on here. It's not really stones. I've got my 22 gauge, my beads on here, situated away from this joint. And then you just start putting some wraps in there. I'm going to use my pliers just to help me out on this. And I might go for 3, maybe 4, just depends on, not these, these, just depends on what mood I'm in. Making sure they're nice and even and tight. I'm going to start with 3. Oh no, I found it. Can you believe I found this green bead on this green mat? Just come around to the other side and put in the same wraps. Maybe I'll just do 3. And turn over to the back and trim these ends. Twist and tuck your cut ends, hiding them in the back there. And then now we have our little centerpiece. Now we get to hook on our, what do you even call this? I'm not even sure. The easiest way I found is if you start with the crossed ends, you've got this facing up, this facing upwards as well. And you take those cross ends and slide them through that little opening and then pull on the cross tails and then just pull up. And that, because this arch is smaller than the main loop, it just slides right in. And then just press down on the top of that arch. And this is not going anywhere. Simply turn around and do the exact same thing on the other side. You still got it facing up. You've got your, whatever we're going to call this, facing up as well. Take the cross ends, slide it in, and then press closed. Isn't that a lovely shape? Now for the next part, let me get our example here. We're going to bring in these wires, straighten them out, and then put some loops on the end. And then we'll go into our little bead, and I'll show you how to do an ear wire. Cannot have earring tutorial without the ear wire. I'm going to press this down, bring that little triangle down. I think I did about 1/2 centimeter for that. It's not, doesn't need to be specific. It's just as long as it matches. That's just about right. And then from this point, take your chain nose pliers right where they cross, holding all of this firmly with your index or whichever and your thumb. And then just turn. Flip over. Got some fuzz on here. Grab that nice and steady, once again, right in that same place with your chain nose pliers. Hold firmly and then just turn. And then one thing that I do, I just kind of go to where it's this one, the second one turned is sitting on top of the other one. And then when I press them together, they'll sit right next to each other. Now I need to adjust mine a little bit. You can do that by taking your chain nose pliers close to the joint of the jaw and then just turn it a little bit. And then it will straighten that right out. They're a little splayed. I'm going to take this time really slow and take that extra few seconds to line those up. It will pay off in the end, I promise. And then just come around to the other side and do the same thing. Holding all that firmly, you can just put your fingers in there and slide it down so we get a little triangle right here. And just do the same thing. Chain nose pliers right where they cross and just turn over, same thing, and just turn until they kind of sit. I think I went a little too far, till they kind of sit on top of each other just a little bit. And then when you kind of bend the wires back and forth, then they'll sit next to each other. See that? No worries if it doesn't quite work when you're first starting to do that, because it takes a little practice, and that's fine. I'm going to trim down from where they meet. I'm going to trim to 1 centimeter. I'm just going to mark that with my finger and trim those ends. And turn. Measure 1 centimeter on the other side from where they meet. The reason why I said cut this to 1 centimeter, because I'm going to go back to my bail pliers and I'm going to use the first bail, which is 2 millimeters, and it works so great with 1 centimeter. It just makes the perfect meeting place. You don't have to trim. You don't have to worry about it being too big or too little or they don't match. 1 centimeter, 2 millimeter on here, perfect match. I'm going to flip over to the back side so that I can then make these matching loops on the end. I like to do one at a time. It's whichever your preference is. A lot of people like to do both at the same time. It doesn't work for me. I don't know what it is. And you get 2 nice little loops right there on the end. Let me turn to the other side. You know what I should have done? I should have hammered before I did that. I get so excited about putting it all together that sometimes I skip over or forget about very critical hammering. Hammering is very important to the strength of your piece. I'm being careful pulling this out because I don't want to deform my loop. And if there's any off at all, just adjust with your chain nose pliers to even things out. If they're going a little wonky, if they're splayed out, just put your pliers right on the end of those 2 loops and bend back and forth, and they will stick together. This one on the other end looks great. And now we can put in the matching wire wrapped bead on the end. Now I'll do a lot the wraps, but I wanted to keep it very simple. I didn't want to have, these are the only wraps that I wanted, so I just kept it a simple, kind of like just a simple loop attachment. And I found these are about 7 or 8 millimeters. I think it's aquamarine. I think. It was just unlabeled, so I'm not really sure, but I think that's what these are, and they are so pretty. And I also went with 18 gauge for this bead. It fitted. I try to keep a uniform gauge usage throughout the piece. So I've got a little length of wire here. This seems to be about 2 inches. Let's see. Oh my. Come on. Carrie is a winner today. And we're going to use this. I'm going to use this. You don't have to use 18 gauge, but that's what I've chosen to attach this bead to the bottom. And you can make your own head pins. You don't have to buy head pins. There are so many different variations of how you can make your own. This is the one that I always do because I just like it. And it's the most basic of basics. I'm taking chain nose pliers right on the end, and then just bending backwards, supporting with my middle finger and my thumb on the wire until I've got a little hook like that. And then we just press it closed with our chain nose pliers. Slide on your bead. And I want this little bit, this head pin that's sticking out, I want this low profile of it facing the viewer. I don't want to see this part. So we need to make our loop going like this so it sits inside this double loop here. I'm going to bend it backwards to myself. So this is the side we're going to view. So I come to the other side and bend it back. Okay, so you know how we said 1 centimeter works great for the 2 millimeter bail. I want to use the 3 millimeter bail, so I think I'll maybe I'm going to trim it to maybe, what did I do? Just over a centimeter. Somewhere between 1 and 1.5 centimeters to go with a 3 millimeter bail. Somewhere in here. And trim that. The second one on my bail is 3 millimeters, and I'll make sure I've got this positioned right. This is where it's going to face in the end, so I got to come in from the other side. Bail right on the end of your wire, and then just wrap around until the end. Oh, I got it just about right. The end meets in there. And you see how I'm going to use this little gap right here in the bail pliers just to pinch that closed. No point in picking up another tool. And make sure that is straight. There we go. Let me open this up. And then I can slide it through here. We're almost done. Just had to make this cute little ear wire. You're going to grab your 20 gauge for this. I've already got one ear wire, so I just need one more. I'm going to cut 2 inches. That is already flush cut, so I don't have to worry about that. I stick with my bail pliers for consistency in my loop shapes and their sizes, and I use the first bail 2 millimeters on my pliers to make the little connector loop. And just make a loop on the end. And the same rule applies when you're doing that. I'm always saying put it right on the end of your wire. It's the same concept when we made that center loop and I said bring it on past the beginning of the wire so we get the curve all the way as much as we can till the joint. Well, the same thing applies here. We want your pliers right on the end so that the curve starts at the very end of the wire and you get a nice little loop like that. Let me see if I can explain that a little better. Let me show you what happens if you don't have it on the end. Okay, so if you see a little bit kicking out, and I'm going to try to make that loop. Well, you've kind of got, what is that? Kind of more of a teardrop, right? Let me show you the difference when you put it right on the end. Hold on, I gotta straighten that out. Otherwise, we're gonna have a wonky loop. Right on the end. I mean, I can barely see it. Then start your loop. And you get what we're looking for. More so than that shape. Okay, so that is the key to the perfect loop. Get your pliers on the end of the wire. Okay, take what we had already made, what we started making our ear wire, and we're going to take our pliers, our bail pliers like that, the 7mm facing yourself. Put your wire in there snug. I can't pull this anymore. That loop is in there nice and snug. Press near the bail all the way around, and I like to just touch that first loop, let it bounce back. And then I will take the 3mm bail and just put a little bend on the end. Nothing too particular. And I'm going to hammer. I'm going to strengthen, flatten, and then I will flatten this curve out with the chasing hammer. Chain nose pliers, I'm going to open this loop. Take our earring. Why I have the hardest time saying earring? Earring. Oh, my goodness. I have totally forgotten to make jump ring. Okay, pause. Let's make a jump ring real quick.
What?
I used the 3mm for this loop down here. I'm going to use a 3mm bail, more 18 gauge. I've got my 18 gauge, 1mm dead soft. Let me deadhead. I'm already thinking about gardening. I'm going to flush cut that and grab my bail pliers. I'm going to put them right in there, and I'm going to bend downwards to access that 3mm bail. And gentle turns around until you see that other end. I also feed in to the right here so that the loops start coming out towards the left. And while I'm here, I might as well just do a couple. You know what I'm saying? Let me pinch that closed. Let's do about 4 here. Again, I am wrapping till I'm past this end of the wire. I want to go all the way past that. So this is how you can make your own little jump rings if you need to. I've already got a flush end here. I'll just turn my pliers so that I can make a flush cut on the end that is going to become my little jump ring. I need to help them come together a little bit. Grabbing another pair of chain nose pliers, I just want to help them come together. Open that loop, slide on the jump ring, close it back up. Now we have our little jump ring on there. And we can slide on our ear wire. And close that loop. And there we have our matching earring. Art Deco inspired, copper inspired. I am in just loving copper the more and more I use it. I love geometric shapes. I love simple lines, clean lines, and this just fit the bill. Let me know what you think of these earrings. Let me know what you would like to see. I read each and every comment, and I appreciate each and every one, of course. I'm actually getting to start to know many of you, and I just love that. And I appreciate you being here every Tuesday. We're learning something new. Like I said, I'm going to try to learn soldering jump rings and bring that to you. There's several things that I am up in my game, up in my skills, so that I can then bring you those same techniques that you can incorporate into your handmade wire wrap jewelry. One thing I have not shown you that many people do, but I do not for some reason, is liver of sulfur and the antiquing of your jewelry. So if you're interested in that, I can also do that as well. I already have those supplies because I'm addicted to buying tools and supplies. If you have a favorite tool or supply that you have not seen me use, please let me know so that I can buy it. So as always, it's been a wonderful day, a wonderful tutorial, and I'm going to see you next Tuesday for something great that we're going to make beautiful together.